The scent came first, pine and frost and the sharp tang of fear. Seraphina stood motionless within the gathering hall of the northern pine pack, her pale blue eyes seeing nothing, yet sensing everything. The winter solstice celebration should have brought joy, mulled wine, and ancient songs echoing through the wooden rafters. Instead, anxiety pressed against her skin like a cold, wet cloth, suffocating and intimate. Bodies pressed together in the hall, heartbeats thundering in her sensitive ears despite her inability to see their faces. Pack members huddled like frightened sheep, their whispers creating a tapestry of dread that only Seraphina could fully interpret. As an Omega, the lowest rank in pack hierarchy, she possessed no extraordinary strength or tactical value. But she carried something else entirely, something inherited from her mother, something that made her both valuable and dangerous. "Stay back, Seraphina," her sister Valeria whispered, strong fingers digging into her shoulder, guiding her toward a shadowed corner. "The Alpha King is here, and his rage precedes him." Seraphina nodded, her slender fingers clutching the small amber pendant hanging around her neck, her mother's last gift before she died. Morgana had been blind like her daughter, yet somehow had become the previous king's most trusted advisor. The memory of her mother's voice floated through her mind. "The eyes that truly see lie behind closed lids, my little wolf." The pendant warmed against her palm, a familiar comfort amidst the chaos. The last time it had heated this way was the night her mother had passed, the night Morgana had sacrificed herself to prevent a war between the 5 territories. Being blind in a werewolf pack meant existing on the periphery. Just Seraphina with the useless pale blue eyes and hair like spun moonlight, as her mother used to describe it. The girl who needed protection and guidance, who couldn't hunt or fight or even serve food without spilling something. An Omega, when her sister had risen to become one of the pack's fiercest beta warriors. The gathered crowd's anxiety tasted metallic on her tongue. Their fear had a scent, sour and sharp, like milk left too long in summer heat. "What is happening?" Seraphina whispered to Valeria, turning her face toward the center of the room where the tension seemed thickest. Valeria's breath caught before she answered. "The Silver Crest Pack violated the treaty. 3 of our hunters were found dead near the border." Her voice broke on the last word. "Rowan was among them." Seraphina's heart plummeted to the soles of her worn leather boots. Rowan had been kind to her, often describing sunsets in such vivid detail she could almost see them. Just yesterday, he had promised to bring her a sprig of winter holly with berries, as red as summer wine. His gentle voice would never paint pictures for her again. The hall fell deadly silent, and she felt it then. A presence so powerful it seemed to displace the air around them, creating a vacuum that pulled at her very essence. Heavy footsteps, deliberate and measured, crossed the wooden floor. The Alpha King, Magnus Blackthorn, ruler of 5 united packs, including their northern pine clan. Seraphina had never been this close to him before. His visits to their remote territory were rare, and she had always been kept away during his appearances. The silence stretched until it felt like a physical thing, brittle and ready to shatter. 3 lives. His voice was deep, controlled, but vibrating with something terrible beneath. 3 lives taken under a peace banner. Seraphina shivered involuntarily. His voice carried power, the kind that resonated in your bones rather than just your ears. The voice of an Alpha King, one whose brother had been assassinated last spring, leaving him a crown he never expected to wear. "Your Majesty." Thorn, their pack leader, spoke cautiously. "We must consider all possibilities before—" "I have considered." The words fell like stones. "Their scent was all over our dead. Their tracks led directly back to their territory. What more consideration does this require?" Something crashed, perhaps a table overturned, and gasps rippled through the crowd. Seraphina sensed the surge of alpha power, an invisible wave washing over the gathering. "They claim innocence," Thorn persisted. "They sent an envoy this morning suggesting another pack might be framing them, trying to incite war between us." Magnus's laugh was without humor, cold as midwinter night. "Of course they would say that. And you believed them? Serafina leaned closer to Valeria. Has he always been this angry? Not like this, her sister whispered back. Since his brother's assassination last spring, he's changed, colder, more ruthless. They say he hasn't smiled in months. The Northern Court calls him Shadow of the North now. The air in the room grew heavier, charged with something primal that made the hairs on Serafina's arms stand up. Pack members around them shifted nervously. Some whimpered softly. In werewolf hierarchy, an alpha's rage affected everyone physically. But an alpha king's fury was something else entirely, a storm that could break not just bodies, but spirits. I will have justice, Magnus declared, his voice rising. I will have their territory, their resources, and the head of whoever orchestrated this attack. Your Majesty, please. Freya, their healer, interjected. War will mean more bodies, more of our children left orphaned, more mates left alone. Do you suggest I let the murder of my people go unanswered? The king's voice had dropped dangerously low. Serafina felt the pressure building in the room, his rage manifesting as physical discomfort for every wolf present. Some began to whine, a primal response to an alpha's displeasure. Her own chest felt tight, lungs struggling against the invisible weight. Send me, a male voice volunteered from somewhere to her left. I'll infiltrate their pack, find proof of who's truly responsible. That would take weeks, the king dismissed. I want action now. I want them to feel what I feel. Serafina's fingers tightened around her pendant as it grew warmer still. Behind the king's rage burned something else, something raw and wounded, not just anger but grief, pain, loneliness. The emotions rolled from him in waves that only she could fully perceive. Without fully understanding why, she stepped forward, slipping from Valeria's grasp. Serafina, her sister hissed, trying to pull her back. But Serafina kept moving, guided by instinct rather than sight, following the epicenter of that emotional storm. The crowd parted silently before her, perhaps too shocked by her boldness to stop her. Who approaches? Magnus growled, his attention suddenly focused on her. She could feel his gaze like heat on her skin. Serafina stopped, trembling yet determined. The pendant burned against her chest now, almost painfully hot. Someone who knows the difference between justice and vengeance, Your Majesty. The hall went deadly quiet. She had just challenged the most powerful alpha in 5 territories, a man whose rage had grown legendary in the months since his brother's death. A blind Omega dares lecture me on justice. His voice held dangerous amusement. Tell me, little wolf, what do you know of leadership, of protecting what's yours, of watching your people die? Serafina lifted her chin, facing him directly despite her unseeing eyes. I know that pain clouds judgment. I know that grief can make enemies where there might be none. I know that choosing war means choosing more funerals, more orphans, more pain. He moved closer. She could feel his heat, smell his scent of thunderstorms and cedar and blood. The pack members around them held their breath collectively, waiting for punishment to fall upon her. And what would you have me do instead? His voice came from directly before her now, close enough that his breath warmed her face. Investigate. Listen. Consider all possibilities, as Thorne suggested. If the Silvercrest Pack is guilty, they won't escape justice. But if they're innocent, and you destroy them, you'll have become what you despise, a killer of innocence. Someone gasped. Another person cursed softly. Valeria was probably having heart palpitations. The Alpha King moved closer still. She could feel the energy emanating from him, prickling along her skin like electricity before a storm. You speak boldly for someone so vulnerable. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Serafina swallowed hard but didn't back away. Perhaps that's why I value caution over quick vengeance. The vulnerable understand consequences better than the powerful ever can. A large, warm hand suddenly gripped her chin, tilting her face up. His touch sent a shock through her system, awakening senses she hadn't known existed. The amber pendant flared with heat, and she could have sworn a golden light pulsed beneath her clothes, though of course she couldn't see it. Your eyes? They see nothing? These eyes? No, she answered, her heart hammering against her ribs. "But I see things others miss." "Like what, little Omega?" His voice had changed slightly, curiosity tempering the rage. "Like the fact that beneath your anger is pain so deep it frightens you. Like the fact that you're not really angry about 3 dead wolves. You're angry about your brother. You're angry that you couldn't save him. And now you're desperate to save everyone else, even if it means burning the world down." His grip on her chin tightened painfully, then released. The tension in the room had become unbearable. She'd gone too far. "Everyone out," he commanded suddenly, "except her." Panic erupted. Valeria cried her name. Thorn tried to protest, but the Alpha King's word was absolute law. As the hall emptied, leaving just the 2 of them, Seraphina stood frozen, uncertain whether she'd just saved her pack or condemned herself. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice quieter now that they were alone. "Seraphina, daughter of Morgana, the blind seer." It wasn't a question. She nodded, surprised. "You knew my mother?" "She counseled my father. I was young, but I remember her." He circled her slowly. She could feel his gaze assessing her, the weight of his attention like a physical touch on her skin. "They said her gift died with her. Yet here you stand, seeing what others cannot." "I don't have her gift," Seraphina insisted. "I just feel things sometimes." "Feel this then," he said, suddenly so close his chest nearly touched her back. "Tell me what you feel from me now." She inhaled deeply, opening her senses to him. The emotions came in layers: confusion, interest, a strange, reluctant fascination, and underneath it all, that same yawning chasm of loneliness she'd sensed before: uncertainty. "You're not used to being challenged. It intrigues you." His laugh was soft, almost genuine. "Clever little wolf." His fingers brushed her hair back from her face, making her shiver. "Your mother once prevented a war with a single conversation. Perhaps the gift didn't die after all." "I'm just an Omega," she said weakly, suddenly very aware of how alone they were, of how completely at his mercy she stood. An Omega who walked up to an enraged Alpha King without hesitation. His voice held a note of something she couldn't identify. "That's either tremendous courage or spectacular stupidity." "Sometimes they look similar from a distance," she offered with a small smile. To her shock, he chuckled, a rough sound as if rarely used. "Indeed." A moment of silence stretched between them, less tense than before. She could sense him studying her, his curiosity a tangible thing in the space between them. "I will delay the attack," he said finally. 3 days for investigation. If evidence emerges clearing the Silver Crest, I'll reconsider. If not, then at least you'll act with certainty rather than rage," she finished. "Bold little thing, aren't you?" There was that strange tone again, almost gentle. Before she could respond, the doors burst open and multiple footsteps rushed in. "Your Majesty," Freya's voice, breathless with urgency. "An envoy from the Silver Crest is approaching under a white flag. They bear evidence. They claim to have tracked the real killers to a rogue pack in the eastern mountains." Seraphina couldn't see the king's expression, but she felt the shift in his energy, the rage temporarily leashed, calculation taking its place. His hand touched her shoulder briefly. "It seems you've bought them the time they needed, Seraphina." As he moved away to meet the envoy, Valeria rushed to her side, embracing her fiercely. "What were you thinking?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "He could have killed you with a flick of his wrist." Seraphina clutched her pendant, now cool against her skin, as if it had absorbed the tension from the room. "I don't think he would have," she said, unsure why she felt so certain. What she couldn't tell Valeria, what she could barely admit to herself, was how something had shifted in that moment when the Alpha King touched her face. Something unnamed had passed between them, like recognition between 2 souls who had never met, yet somehow knew each other. And more disturbing still was the certainty that whatever had begun in this room today was far from over. 3 days passed like a fever dream. The Alpha King remained in their territory, overseeing the investigation personally. Seraphina hadn't encountered him since that night in the gathering hall, but his presence lingered everywhere like a heavy perfume, inescapable and disorienting. Pack members whispered about his cold efficiency, how he worked tirelessly with trackers and interrogated witnesses with merciless precision. They found evidence supporting the Silvercrest's claims, tracks leading to that mountain territory, weapons with unfamiliar markings. The Rogue Pack's alpha is apparently someone who holds an old grudge against both our pack and the Silver Crest, Valeria told her as she helped Seraphina fold laundry in their small cottage. Seraphina nodded, smoothing the rough linen of a shirt between her fingers. So war has been averted for now. But Seraphina, Valeria paused, her hand stilling on the fabric. People are talking about you, about what you did. Seraphina bit her lip. I only spoke the truth. You challenged an Alpha King at the height of his rage and lived to tell about it. Her sister's voice held wonder and worry in equal measure. Some are saying it's because of who your mother was. Others say it's because you're... Because I'm what? Seraphina prompted when Valeria trailed off. Her sister hesitated. There's an old legend about alphas and their perfect counterparts, about special omegas with the power to calm even the wildest alpha nature. They're incredibly rare, maybe one born every few generations. They call them moonbound omegas. Seraphina snorted. You can't possibly think... I'm just telling you what they're saying, Valeria interrupted. Besides, he asked about you yesterday. Her heart stumbled. Who did? Don't be obtuse. The king. He asked Thorn where you were staying, whether you were mated, your age. The blood rushed to Seraphina's face. That doesn't mean anything. He probably just wanted to know about the crazy girl who confronted him. Maybe, Valeria conceded, but her tone suggested she thought otherwise. That evening, Seraphina sat alone on their porch, face tilted toward the fading warmth of a sun she couldn't see. The pendant lay cool against her skin, and she found herself rubbing it absently, wondering what her mother would make of all this. Had she truly known the former king, as Magnus suggested? Had she passed some mysterious gift to Seraphina without her knowledge? The soft crunch of approaching footsteps pulled her from her reverie. Heavy steps, measured and confident. Her body tensed with recognition before her mind caught up. Your Majesty, she said softly, rising from her seat. You knew it was me. His voice held surprise and something else. Approval, perhaps. Your walk is distinctive. The scent of thunderstorms and cedar enveloped her as he moved closer. May I join you? She nodded, sinking back into her chair as he took the one beside her. For several moments they sat in silence, the evening air cool against her skin. The trackers confirmed what the Silver Crest claimed, he said finally. The rogue Alpha has been captured. He'll face trial tomorrow. I'm glad truth prevailed, she said carefully. Thanks to you. His voice had that same strange gentleness she'd heard briefly in the hall. Your intervention gave everyone time to think more clearly, including me. She shook her head. I only said what needed saying. Few would dare. A pause. Your sister says you've lived here your whole life, that after your mother died, you stayed close to home, seldom venturing beyond this small territory. Her fingers tightened around the armrests of her chair. The familiar is safer when you can't see. Every path, every tree, every stone here is mapped in my mind. Yet you navigated the crowded hall straight to me without hesitation. The observation hung between them like a question. She had no answer that made sense, even to herself. She'd felt drawn to him, pulled by something she couldn't explain. Sometimes instinct guides us, she offered instead. Indeed, he replied, the words seemingly heavy with meaning. Another silence fell, this one more charged than before. She could feel him watching her, his gaze almost a physical touch against her skin. I leave tomorrow, he said abruptly. The capital requires my attention. Of course, she replied, ignoring the strange pang of disappointment. A king's duties never end. No, they don't, he agreed, suddenly sounding weary. But I find myself reluctant to leave. Her breath caught in her throat. Before she could formulate a response, he continued, "I've made arrangements with Thorn. I'll be sending representatives to identify talented wolves from each territory for special positions at court. They'll arrive in 3 weeks' time." "That's good for the pack," she said, confused by this sudden change of subject. "When they come, Seraphina," he said, her name soft on his lips, "I want you to present yourself." She laughed, the sound escaping before she could stop it. "Me? What possible position could I fill at court? I can barely serve meals without assistance." His hand closed over hers, silencing her laughter instantly. "You have gifts you don't yet understand, insights others lack. The court needs that perspective. I need it." The warmth of his touch sent sparks racing up her arm. "Your Majesty." "Magnus," he corrected quietly. "When we're alone, call me Magnus." The intimacy of it stole her breath. "Magnus," she whispered, testing the name. "I don't belong at court." "I'm not—" "You questioned an Alpha King to his face and made him reconsider a war," he interrupted. "You're exactly what the court needs. Someone who sees beyond appearances, beyond politics, and posturing." His fingers tightened slightly around hers. "Promise me you'll come." It wasn't quite an order, but the authority in his voice left little room for refusal. "I'll consider it," she managed. He made a low sound, frustrated amusement. "Stubborn little wolf." He released her hand and rose from his chair. 3 weeks, Seraphina. I'll be expecting you." With that, he departed, leaving her shaken and confused. True to his word, Magnus left the next morning. Life in the pack should have returned to normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. People treated Seraphina differently, some with newfound respect, others with suspicion, as if she'd used some kind of witchcraft on the Alpha King. "You should go," Valeria insisted, as the days passed and the royal representative's arrival drew nearer. "This is the opportunity of a lifetime, Seraphina." "For someone who can see," she countered. "The capital would be completely foreign to me. I'd be lost, dependent on others for everything." "You'd adapt," her sister argued. "You always do." At night, alone in her bed, Seraphina found her thoughts returning to Magnus, to the sound of his voice, the touch of his hand on hers, the strange connection she'd felt. Was that what Valeria meant about special omegas? The idea seemed absurd, like something from children's tales, yet she couldn't deny that something had passed between them, something unexplainable. The amber pendant her mother had given her seemed to respond to his presence, growing warm whenever they spoke. 2 weeks after the king's departure, disaster struck. A hunting party from their pack, including Valeria, was ambushed near the northern border. 2 killed, 3 badly wounded, Valeria among them. Seraphina sat beside her sister's bed in Freya's healing cabin, clutching her fevered hand as infection battled with healing herbs in her system. "Rogues again," Thorn told her grimly, his voice heavy with fatigue. "But different ones this time. They seem specifically targeted at our pack." "Why?" Seraphina asked, stroking Valeria's burning forehead. "I don't know," the pack leader admitted, "but I've sent word to the Alpha King." Days passed with Valeria hovering between life and death. Seraphina barely left her side, talking to her constantly, reminding her of childhood memories, singing the songs their mother had taught them. On the 4th night, exhausted and desperate, she clutched her amber pendant and prayed to whatever spirits might be listening to spare her sister. "Please," she whispered into the darkness, "she's all I have left." "Not all," came a deep voice from the doorway. Seraphina whirled toward the sound, recognizing it instantly. "Magnus!" Heavier footsteps than she remembered crossed the room, followed by the rustle of a cloak being removed. "I came as soon as I received word," he said, his voice closer now. "You came yourself? For a pack member's injury?" Disbelief colored her tone. "For your sister," he corrected softly. "How is she?" "The fever still hasn't broken. Freya says the next few hours are critical." Her voice broke on the last word. A warm hand settled on her shoulder. "I brought my personal healer. She has knowledge beyond what your pack healer possesses." As if on cue, brisk footsteps entered the cabin, followed by the clinical sounds of a medical examination. Magnus guided Serafina away from the bed, his hand firm on her elbow. "You need rest," he said, his tone allowing no argument. "You look ready to collapse." "I can't leave her," Serafina protested weakly. "My healer will watch over her." His grip tightened slightly. "I need to speak with you anyway about these attacks." Reluctantly, she allowed him to lead her outside. The night air was cool against her skin after the stuffy cabin. "You've been crying," he observed, his thumb brushing her cheek unexpectedly. She turned away, embarrassed by her weakness. "She's my sister." "I understand family loyalty better than most." There was that weariness again, the weight of his position evident in his voice. "The attacks are connected, Serafina, both the ones 3 weeks ago and these recent ones." This caught her attention. "How?" "The same weapon markings, the same tactical approach, but different packs deliberately left behind. First to implicate the Silver Crest, now to cast suspicion elsewhere." "Someone's trying to start a war," she realized aloud. "Yes." His hand found her elbow again, guiding her to what she presumed was a bench. "Someone who wants the packs divided, weakened." As they sat, she became acutely aware of his proximity, the heat of his body close to hers, the subtle shift in his scent when he was near her. Something warmer, less thunderstorm, and more banked fire. "You didn't come just for Valeria," she said as realization dawned. "You came because you think I might sense something about these attacks. Your mother had an uncanny ability to discern truth from lies, to sense motivations others couldn't perceive." His voice lowered. "I believe you've inherited more than just her blindness, Serafina." The use of her full name sent a shiver through her. "I'm not a seer." "Aren't you?" His hand found hers, warm and steady. "You saw through my rage to the pain beneath. You walked straight to me in a crowded room without guidance. You sensed exactly what I needed to hear in that moment." She shook her head, though less convincingly than before. "Coincidence." "I don't believe in coincidence." And his thumb traced circles on her palm, the intimate gesture making it difficult to focus. "I believe in fate, in destined paths, in wolves finding their perfect counterparts when they need them most." Her breath caught. "What are you saying?" Instead of answering, he asked, "Have you considered my offer to come to the capital?" "I haven't decided," she admitted. "The idea terrifies me." "What does? Leaving home or what you might discover about yourself?" "Both," she wanted to say, but something else distracted her. A subtle shift in his scent, a quickening of his pulse that she could somehow sense. He was nervous, she realized with shock. The Alpha King, nervous about her answer. "Why does it matter so much to you?" she asked softly. His hand tightened on hers. "Because in 300 years of recorded history, only 5 Omegas have ever been able to soothe an Alpha's rage with their presence alone." "Because when you touched me—" "I never touched you," she interrupted, confused. There was a moment of silence. Then, "You don't remember." "Remember what?" He exhaled slowly. "In the gathering hall, after everyone left, you approached me again. You put your hand on my face and said something in the old tongue, words I didn't understand. And then you kissed me." Her heart stopped. "That's impossible. I would remember something like that." "Yet you don't." His voice had gone carefully neutral. "Interesting. Are you saying I kissed you and then forgot about it?" The idea was absurd, mortifying, impossible. "Not just kissed," he said quietly. "You calmed a rage that has burned in me since my brother's death, a rage I thought would consume me until nothing remained." His fingers brushed her cheek, and in that moment, something inside me recognized you, as if I'd been waiting for you without knowing it. Her head spun. This couldn't be happening. The Alpha King couldn't possibly be suggesting what it sounded like he was suggesting. "Magnus," she whispered, his name unfamiliar on her tongue. "I don't understand what's happening." "Neither do I," he admitted, and the vulnerability in those 3 words shocked her more than anything else he'd said. But I know I've thought of little else since that day. I know when I heard your sister was injured, nothing could have kept me from coming to you." His hand cupped her cheek now, his touch gentle despite the strength she knew it contained. "And I know when I leave this time, I want you to come with me." Before she could respond, the cabin door burst open. "Your Majesty," came an unfamiliar voice, presumably his healer. "The fever's breaking. She's asking for her sister." Relief flooded Serafina. Valeria would live. She stood quickly, only to sway as exhaustion and emotion overtook her. Strong arms caught her, lifting her effortlessly. "I have her," Magnus said to his healer, cradling Serafina against his chest. "Prepare a bed for her as well. She needs rest." "I need to see Valeria," she protested weakly. "And you will, but first, you'll rest." His voice broke no argument, pure alpha command. Yet beneath it was genuine concern, warmth she hadn't expected from the man they called Shadow of the North. As he carried her back into the cabin, her mind whirled with everything he'd told her. A kiss she couldn't remember, a connection she couldn't explain, a future she hadn't imagined suddenly opening before her. And through it all, an unsettling certainty that whatever path she chose, Magnus Blackthorn would be irrevocably part of it. The pendant against her chest began to warm again, pulsing with golden light that everyone but Serafina could see. A sign to those who knew the old ways, the moon-bound Omega had found her Alpha at last. In that moment of connection, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows at the edge of the clearing, eyes gleaming with malice in the darkness. The first move in a centuries-old game had been played, and now the board was set. The Alpha King had found his destined mate, exactly as someone had planned. Morning light warmed her face when Serafina finally awoke, disoriented and groggy. The scent of medicinal herbs and pine told her she was still in Freya's healing cabin. For a moment, panic seized her. "Valeria?" she called out, sitting up suddenly. "Easy there," came Freya's gentle voice. "Your sister is doing much better, sleeping naturally now." Relief washed through Serafina as she detected Valeria's steady, even breathing from a nearby bed. She reached out instinctively, her fingers finding the familiar shape of her pendant, cool against her skin. "The king's healer knew exactly which poultice to use," Freya continued, her tone tinged with admiration and perhaps a touch of professional jealousy. "The infection is retreating faster than I've ever seen." "And the others who were attacked?" Serafina asked, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. "Recovering too. It's remarkable. Yesterday, I feared we'd lose at least one." Freya paused, and Serafina could sense her hesitation. "The Alpha King hasn't left the territory." Serafina's heart quickened its pace. "He's still here?" "Been meeting with Thorn since dawn, discussing security measures for the pack." Freya moved closer, the floorboards creaking beneath her weight. "He carried you to this bed last night, and I've never seen an Alpha look at anyone the way he looked at you, like you were something precious and fragile." Heat crept into Serafina's cheeks. "You're imagining things." "I'm not the only one who noticed," Freya countered. "The whole pack is talking. Some say it explains why he rushed here personally for what could have been handled by his commanders." Serafina turned her face away, desperate to change the subject. "I need to check on Valeria." Freya helped her stand, guiding her to her sister's bedside. Serafina reached out, finding Valeria's hand. It was cooler now, her pulse steady beneath Serafina's sensitive fingertips. "You scared me," she whispered to her sleeping sister. "She's strong," Freya assured her. "Like you." Serafina shook her head. "I'm not strong. I just survive." "There's strength in that, too." A new voice entered the conversation, deeper, authoritative, yet somehow softened. Magnus had returned. The air in the room shifted with his presence, becoming charged, expectant. "Your Majesty," Freya murmured, her tone deferential. "I was just about to send word that Serafina is awake." "Leave us, please," he said, not unkindly. The healer's footsteps retreated, the door closing softly behind her. Silence stretched between them. Serafina remained beside Valeria's bed, her hands still clasping her sister's, anchoring herself to the familiar in the face of everything unknown that Magnus represented. "How is she?" he asked, moving closer. "Better, thanks to your healer." Serafina turned her face toward his voice. "I'm grateful." "No gratitude needed." He stopped beside her, his warmth radiating against her arm. "How are you feeling?" "Confused," she admitted, "about everything you told me last night." He was quiet for a moment. "You truly don't remember kissing me?" Her face burned. "No, it's not possible. I wouldn't have been so forward." "Yet you were." His voice held no mockery, only curiosity. "Your eyes clouded over, turned completely white, and you spoke words in the old tongue. Then you pressed your lips to mine, and it was like a storm breaking. The rage that had consumed me for months simply dissolved." She shook her head, bewildered. "That sounds like possession, not me." "Or like your mother's gift," he suggested quietly. Morgana was known to enter trances when the spirits wished to speak through her. Serafina's fingers found her pendant automatically. "My mother never mentioned such things to me." "Perhaps she was waiting until you were ready." His hand settled lightly on her shoulder. "The old stories speak of special omegas, spirit-touched, they called them, capable of balancing an alpha's power, of seeing beyond the physical world." "Those are just legends," she protested weakly. "Many legends have roots in truth." His fingers moved to brush a strand of hair from her face, the touch sending shivers down her spine. "Since that moment in the hall, I've felt connected to you, as if an invisible thread binds us." Serafina swallowed hard. "And if I don't feel the same?" His hand stilled. "Do you not?" The question hung between them, demanding truth. And the truth was that she did feel something, a pull toward him that defied explanation, a sense of recognition that transcended their brief acquaintance. "I don't know what I feel," she whispered. "This is all happening so fast." He withdrew his hand slowly. "I understand, but we may have little time for hesitation." "What do you mean?" "These attacks aren't random, Serafina. They're coordinated, precise." His voice grew harder. "Someone is testing my defenses, provoking my rage, trying to drive me to declare war." "But why?" "That's what we need to discover." He moved away, pacing the small cabin. "My father always said there are no coincidences in matters of power. Your appearance in my life, these attacks, they're connected somehow." Valeria stirred beside her, saving Serafina from having to respond. "Sarah?" Her voice was weak, raspy. Serafina turned to her sister immediately, relief flooding through her. "I'm here." "What happened? I remember the attack and then—" Valeria trailed off, confusion evident. "You've been ill," Serafina explained, squeezing her hand. "But you're getting better now." "The Alpha King," Valeria murmured, and Serafina could tell from her tone that she'd noticed Magnus's presence in the room. "I came for both of you," he confirmed, his deep voice gentler than Serafina had ever heard it. Valeria's hand tightened on Serafina's. "Then it's true what they say about you and my sister?" Serafina tensed. "Valeria, what do they say?" "That you've recognized her as your true mate," Valeria said bluntly to Magnus. "That she calmed your fury when no one else could." Magnus was silent for a long moment. "The connection between us is unusual," he said finally. "More than I can explain. But your sister hasn't accepted anything yet." "Because she's stubborn," Valeria said with a weak laugh. "Always has been." "I prefer to think of it as cautious," Serafina retorted, grateful for the lightening of the mood despite her embarrassment. "The king's advisors won't like it," Valeria continued, apparently determined to discuss this openly. "An Omega with no political connections, no formal education, and blind, too. They'll see her as unsuitable." "Valeria," Serafina hissed, mortified. But Magnus only laughed, a genuine sound that transformed the energy in the room. "My advisors haven't liked most of my decisions since I took the throne. Their disapproval is practically a recommendation at this point." "Still," Valeria pressed, "they'll make things difficult for her." Which is precisely why I need her, he said, suddenly serious again. The court is a nest of vipers, ambition masked as loyalty, cruelty disguised as tradition. Someone who sees beyond appearances, who senses the truth beneath the facade, that's rare and valuable. I'm just a simple pack wolf, Serafina protested. I know nothing of court politics. You know people, he countered. You understand what drives them, what wounds them, what heals them. That's worth more than any political education. Valeria's hand squeezed Serafina's. You should go with him, Sarah. There's nothing for you here except memories and familiar paths. There's you, Serafina reminded her. I'll recover, Valeria said firmly. And then I'll visit you at court and scandalize everyone with my common manners. Despite everything, Serafina smiled. That sounded exactly like Valeria. Your sister would have the protection of the crown, Magnus added, as would your entire pack. No one would dare target them again. The implication hung in the air that by going with him, she might be ensuring her pack's safety. It felt manipulative, yet she couldn't deny the logic. A pack with direct connection to the Alpha King would be less vulnerable. Before she could respond, there was a commotion outside. Raised voices, hurried footsteps. The cabin door burst open. Your Majesty, Thorne said urgently. We've captured one of the rogues from yesterday's attack. He was trying to slip back across our border. Magnus's posture changed instantly, tension radiating from him. Where is he? The holding cells beneath the meeting hall. He's injured, but conscious. The Alpha King moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at Serafina. Come with me. Not quite a command, but not quite a request either. Me? She asked, bewildered. Why? Because if anyone can sense whether he's telling the truth, it's you. His tone left no room for argument. Serafina hesitated, torn between staying with Valeria and the undeniable pull of Magnus's request. Go, Valeria urged quietly. I'll be fine. With a sigh of resignation, Serafina rose and allowed Thorne to guide her from the cabin, Magnus leading the way. The walk to the meeting hall was silent, tension thick in the air. Inside, Thorne led them down a narrow staircase to the cellar level, where the pack kept its rare prisoners. The scent hit her first. Blood, fear, and something else, something bitter and wrong. He's not healing properly, she whispered to Magnus as they approached the cell. There's infection. Magnus's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. Can you sense anything else? Serafina focused, reaching out with senses beyond the physical, as her mother had taught her. Desperation, exhaustion, and, she frowned, confusion, as if he doesn't fully understand why he's here. Interesting, Magnus murmured. Let me question him first. The cell door creaked open, and they entered. Serafina could hear the prisoner's ragged breathing, smell his fear intensifying at the Alpha King's presence. You attacked members of the Northern Pine Pack yesterday, Magnus stated, his voice hard as granite. Why? A rasping laugh. Wouldn't you like to know, Your Majesty? You're already facing execution for your crimes, Magnus continued coldly. Cooperation might earn you a quicker death. The prisoner coughed wetly. Death comes for us all anyway. Something about his tone caught Serafina's attention, resignation rather than defiance. She stepped closer despite Thorne's warning hand on her arm. You're dying, she said quietly. The wound is poisoned. Silence then. Clever girl. Who sent you? She asked gently. Doesn't matter. They're too powerful, too connected. They'll win in the end. When? What? Magnus demanded. Everything, the prisoner wheezed. The territories, the throne, they've been planning it for years. She could sense Magnus's tension beside her. Who are they? Can't say. Another wet cough. They have my mate, my pups. Said they'd kill them slow if I talked. The despair in his voice was genuine. Serafina reached out instinctively, finding his fevered hand. Where are they being held? She asked softly. Northern mountains, old mining tunnels. His fingers clutched at hers weakly. Please, they're innocent. Serafina turned toward where she knew Magnus stood. He's telling the truth. The Alpha King was silent for a moment. Then, if I send men to free your family, will you tell me everything? Hope flared in the prisoner's scent. You would do that? I protect innocents, Magnus said firmly, even the families of those who've wronged me. Then yes. The prisoner's grip on Serafina's hand tightened. The one who recruited me was called Darius, said he served a powerful noble with claim to the throne, someone you trust. Magnus went very still. Did he name this noble? No, but he wore this. A rustling sound. Then Thorn gasped. What is it? Serafina asked, frustrated by her blindness. A signet ring, Thorn explained, with the royal crest, but marked with a diagonal slash across it. The symbol of the King's Council, Magnus said, his voice dangerously quiet. My own advisors. The implications hung in the air like smoke. Betrayal from within the king's inner circle, a conspiracy reaching to the highest levels of power. He's fading, Serafina said urgently, feeling the prisoner's life force ebbing beneath her fingers. How many are involved? How far does this reach? Magnus asked quickly. Don't know numbers, the prisoner gasped, but heard them say, infiltrated every major pack, waiting for signal. What signal? Your death. The words fell like stones between them. Or something close to it, something to destabilize the throne. His grip on Serafina's hand suddenly went slack. She felt for a pulse, but found nothing. He's gone, she said quietly. Magnus's hand found her shoulder, guiding her back from the body. We need to leave for the capital immediately. But his family, I'll send my most trusted men right away, he assured her. But we can't waste time. If what he said is true, the entire kingdom is at risk. As they emerged from the cellar, Magnus pulled her aside while Thorn went to prepare for their departure. I'm sorry to rush you, he said, his voice low and intense. But the situation has changed. I need to return to the capital immediately, and I need you with me. Why me? She asked, still reeling from everything they'd just heard. His hands framed her face, surprisingly gentle given the urgency of the moment. Because if there are traitors in my inner circle, I need someone who can sense their true intentions, someone they won't suspect, someone they'll underestimate. Because I'm blind, an Omega. Yes, he admitted bluntly. They'll see you as no threat, perhaps even as a weakness of mine to exploit. They won't guard their thoughts, their emotions around you. The logic was sound, if somewhat calculating. And Valeria, the pack? I'll leave a contingent of my personal guard here for protection. And once we identify the conspirators, your people will be safer than ever. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones softly. I know this isn't how you wanted to make this decision. I know I'm asking much of you, but I believe you were brought into my life at this exact moment for a reason, Serafina. The intensity in his voice made her shiver. And if I refuse? His hands dropped away. Then I'll respect your choice. But I think you know as well as I do that something larger than both of us is at work here. He was right. From the moment she'd approached him in the gathering hall, events had been pulling them toward this point, this decision. Whether by fate or coincidence or some gift inherited from her mother, she was now entangled in a conspiracy that threatened the entire kingdom. I need to say goodbye to Valeria, she said finally, the words feeling like a surrender. Magnus's relief was palpable. Of course, we'll leave within the hour. The journey to the capital took 3 days by horseback, with Magnus insisting she ride with him rather than alone. At first she protested, indignant at the implication she couldn't manage on her own, but the practicality of the arrangement soon became clear. The constant proximity to him was both unsettling and oddly comforting, his body a solid warmth against her back, his arms ensuring she wouldn't fall. Each night they made camp, and he insisted she sleep near the fire, his own bedroll positioned protectively close. She could sense his vigilance, his awareness of every sound in the forest around them. We're approaching the city, he murmured on the 3rd day, his breath warm against her ear. You'll hear it soon. Indeed, minutes later, a cacophony of sounds reached her, voices, cartwheels on stone, animals, music, all blending together in a symphony of life so different from the quiet forest she'd known. The scent changed too. Smoke, spices, animals, and too many people to count, each with their unique signature. "It's overwhelming," she whispered, instinctively pressing back against his chest. His arm tightened around her waist. "Focus on me," he said quietly. "My scent, my heartbeat. Use them as anchors." She did as he suggested, centering herself on the now familiar cedar and thunderstorm scent, the steady rhythm of his heart against her back. It helped, though the city's sensory assault remained dizzying. As they rode through what she assumed were the main streets, the crowd's reactions shifted. Hushed whispers, then silence, then calls of, "The king returns." Magnus remained tense against her, his body language alert, despite the seemingly warm welcome. "Trust no one," he had warned during their journey. "Not until we know how deep this conspiracy runs." The royal palace, when they finally reached it, was a different world entirely. Hushed voices, controlled movements, the scent of polished stone and beeswax. Servants approached immediately, their deference evident in their tones as they welcomed their king home. "Prepare the blue suite in the east wing," Magnus commanded as he helped Serafina dismount. "Lady Serafina will be staying there." "The blue suite, Your Majesty?" someone questioned, surprise evident. "But that's in the royal family's private wing." "Exactly," Magnus replied, his tone brooking no argument. "And arrange for Elena to attend her. She'll need appropriate attire and orientation to the palace layout." His hand remained at the small of her back as he guided her inside, through corridors that echoed with their footsteps. The air grew cooler, the sounds more muffled as they moved deeper into the palace. "Your rooms will be adjacent to mine," he explained quietly. "It's the safest location, and it will allow us to speak privately without arousing suspicion." "Won't that create more suspicion?" she asked. "Placing an unknown Omega near the king's chambers?" His soft laugh surprised her. "Court gossip is inevitable regardless of where I place you. At least this way the gossip serves our purpose. They'll be so busy speculating about our relationship that they may reveal their true allegiances." They stopped before what must have been a door. "Rest now," he said, his voice softening. "Elena will help you settle in. I must meet with my commanders immediately, but I'll come to you this evening to discuss our next steps." Before she could respond, he lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a formal gesture made intimate by the lingering of his touch. Then he was gone, leaving her in the care of a servant who introduced herself as Elena. The next hours passed in a blur as she was bathed, dressed in silk softer than anything she'd ever worn, and oriented to her new chambers. Elena, a beta with a motherly manner, proved surprisingly helpful, describing each room in detail and guiding Serafina's hands to important landmarks. "The blue suite has that name for its azure silk hangings and sapphire accents," Elena explained, "though that means little to you, I suppose. But you might appreciate that it's designed for excellent acoustics. Music played here sounds particularly sweet." She continued her patient orientation, showing Serafina how the furniture was arranged, where to find what she needed, always ensuring she could navigate independently. "The king has had scented markers placed at key points," Elena mentioned, guiding Serafina's hand to a small recess in the wall near the door. "Cedar for doors, lavender for windows, sandalwood for hearths. He ordered it done specifically for your arrival." Serafina's heart fluttered at this unexpected thoughtfulness. Magnus had anticipated her needs in a way few ever had. By evening, she had a rudimentary mental map of her quarters, though the vastness of the palace beyond remained daunting. When Magnus finally returned, his footsteps immediately recognizable, she was seated by an open window, enjoying the evening breeze and the distant sounds of the city. "You look—" He paused in what she assumed was the doorway. "You look like you belong here." Serafina smoothed the unfamiliar silk of her new gown self-consciously. "I feel like an imposter." His footsteps approached, and then he was beside her, his scent mingling with something new. Ink, parchment, the metallic tang of armor. The day's business clung to him. "The council has been informed of your arrival," he said, taking the seat opposite hers. "As my guest of honor from the Northern Pine Territory, a cultural envoy of sorts. And they believed that? His soft laugh held little humor. They pretended to, while immediately beginning to investigate your background, I'm sure. Will they find anything of interest? Only that you're the daughter of Morgana, which may actually lend credibility to your presence here. Your mother's reputation still carries weight in certain circles. A pause. The council meets tomorrow morning. I want you there. Her heart quickened. So soon? We have little time. The prisoner's information suggests their plans are already in motion. His voice lowered. I've dispatched my most trusted men to the mining tunnels he mentioned. If his family is there, we'll find them. And if they're not, then we'll know he was either lying or misinformed. His tone suggested he didn't believe either scenario. Serafina twisted her pendant nervously. How should I behave tomorrow? What's my role in this meeting? Simply observe. Listen. Feel what remains unspoken. He leaned closer, his knee brushing hers. You'll be introduced as my honored guest, nothing more. The council members will underestimate you. Use that to your advantage. The responsibility felt enormous, the fate of the kingdom potentially resting on her ability to sense deception among people she'd never met. What if I fail? She whispered. What if I can't discern who's loyal and who isn't? His hand covered hers, stilling its nervous movement. You won't fail. I've seen what you can do, Serafina, even if you haven't fully recognized it yourself. The confidence in his voice was both reassuring and terrifying. You're placing tremendous faith in a gift I'm not sure I possess. Because I've felt its effects firsthand. His thumb traced circles on her palm, the intimate gesture sending shivers up her arm. Do you still not remember what happened between us? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. I've had dreams, she admitted reluctantly. Fragments, impressions, but nothing concrete. His grip tightened slightly. Tell me. Just sensations. Your face beneath my fingertips. Words in my throat that didn't feel like my own. A compulsion I couldn't resist. She swallowed hard. But it feels more like remembering someone else's actions than my own. The old texts speak of this, he said quietly. How spirit-touched Omegas sometimes channel something beyond themselves, the ancient wisdom of the pack, perhaps, or something even older. She shook her head, overwhelmed. This morning, I was just Serafina, the blind girl who needed help with everything. Now I'm supposedly some mystical figure from legend who may save the kingdom. It's too much. His laugh was gentle, surprising her. And I was just a second son, never meant for the throne, until my brother's assassination thrust me into a role I wasn't prepared for. His hand moved to cup her cheek. Sometimes fate thrusts greatness upon those who never sought it. The touch of his skin against hers sent warmth cascading through her. Something stirred in her memory, the same sensation, but stronger, more urgent. His face beneath her hands, his breath mingling with mine. I think I'm starting to remember, she whispered. His breath caught. Tell me. Your rage was like a physical thing, hot and sharp and dangerous, but beneath it was such pain, such loneliness. The words came without conscious thought. I couldn't bear it. I had to reach you, had to make it stop. You did, he murmured. You cut through rage that my own brother couldn't penetrate in his final days. You found something in me I thought was long dead. His forehead pressed against hers, their breath mingling in the small space between them. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Almost hoped he would, despite the madness of it all. Instead, he drew back with what sounded like reluctance. Rest now, he said, his voice regaining its composure. Tomorrow will test us both. After he left, Serafina lay awake for hours, her mind racing with everything that had happened since that night in the gathering hall. How had her life changed so completely in such a short time? And this pull toward Magnus, was it real or merely the product of legends and expectations? She couldn't deny the connection she felt to him, a recognition that went beyond the physical, beyond the rational. What she couldn't know was that in the shadows of the palace corridors, figures were already moving against them. Her arrival had accelerated plans long in the making. Tomorrow would indeed be a test, but not only of her mysterious abilities. It would be a test of survival. Morning came too quickly. Serafina awoke to Elena's gentle touch on her shoulder and the scent of honeyed tea steaming from a nearby table. "The king requested you be ready by the 8th bell, my lady," Elena said, her voice carrying a hint of anxiety. "The council gathers at the 9th. Serafina sat up, disoriented in the unfamiliar bed. The silken sheets slid against her skin like water, so different from the rough linens of home. "What time is it now?" "Just past the 7th bell. I've drawn your bath and laid out suitable attire." Elena guided Serafina's hand to the steaming cup. "Drink. You'll need your strength today." As she bathed in water scented with lavender and rosemary, Serafina tried to calm her racing thoughts. Today she would face the King's Council, powerful alphas and betas who had spent lifetimes navigating court politics. And she was expected to discern truth from lies, loyalty from treachery, with nothing but her strange intuition to guide her. Elena dressed her in what she described as a gown of midnight blue silk with silver embroidery depicting the phases of the moon. The symbolism wasn't lost on Serafina. Magnus was already sending subtle messages to his council about her status as a possible moon-bound Omega. "How do I look?" Serafina asked, feeling suddenly vulnerable. Elena's hands adjusted the fall of the fabric over Serafina's shoulders, like someone who belongs at the king's side. "That's what Magnus said yesterday." "Did he now?" Elena's voice carried a smile. "The king sees more clearly than most give him credit for." As Elena arranged Serafina's hair, weaving silver threads through the pale strands, her fingers paused on the amber pendant. "This is beautiful. Old, too, by the feel of it." "It was my mother's," Serafina explained. "Her last gift to me." "You should wear it prominently," Elena decided. "The old noble houses still respect such things, heirlooms, family connections. It will remind them that you come from lineage worthy of notice, even if it's not royal." When she was ready, Elena guided her through the palace corridors, quietly describing key landmarks to help Serafina build her mental map. The sounds of the palace in mourning echoed around them, servants hurrying to their duties, guards changing shifts, the distant clatter from kitchens preparing the day's meals. They stopped before a set of doors where Serafina could sense a presence waiting. "Lady Serafina," came Magnus's voice, deep and formal. "You look radiant this morning." "Your Majesty," she replied, dipping into the curtsy Elena had hastily taught her. "I'll take her from here, Elena," Magnus said. "Return in 2 hours to escort her back to her chambers." As Elena's footsteps faded, Magnus stepped closer. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice lowered for her ears alone. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied honestly, "though I still don't understand what you expect me to do in there." His hand found the small of her back, warm and steadying. "Trust your instincts. Notice who reacts when certain topics arise, who seems uncomfortable, who seems too eager. Let your gift guide you." "And what if they ask me questions directly?" "Answer honestly, but reveal nothing about why you're truly here." His voice grew even quieter. "Remember, we suspect traitors among them, but we don't know who. Until we do, everyone is suspect." With that warning, he guided her into what she sensed was a large, high-ceilinged room. The scent of old parchment, leather, and beeswax candles filled the air. Their footsteps echoed on marble floors as Magnus led her to what must have been her seat. "My lords and ladies of the council," Magnus announced, his voice carrying the full weight of royal authority. "Allow me to present Lady Serafina of the Northern Pine Pack, daughter of the seer Morgana." A tense silence greeted his introduction. Serafina felt the weight of unseen gazes assessing her, judging her worth in an instant. "Lady Serafina." A woman's voice finally broke the silence, smooth as honey, yet somehow lacking warmth. "What an unexpected honor. We seldom receive guests from the outer territories, especially during such challenging times." "Lady Ravenna," Magnus acknowledged. "Lady Serafina has provided valuable insights regarding the recent attacks. I believe her perspective will benefit our discussions." The chair beneath Seraphina was ornately carved, uncomfortable against her back. She sat with perfect posture, as Elena had instructed, her face composed despite her inner turmoil. Valuable insights. This voice was male, aged, with a hint of derision. From a... He stopped abruptly. From a what, Lord Cassius? Magnus's tone carried a dangerous edge. Please, complete your thought. The tension thickened around them. Seraphina could sense the discomfort radiating from the man who'd spoken. From someone with such limited experience in matters of state, Your Majesty, he said smoothly, clearly substituting his words. But the implication remained clear. From a blind Omega, from a nobody. Sometimes the clearest perspective comes from those untainted by political ambition, Magnus replied, his voice deceptively calm. Now, shall we address the matters at hand? The coordinated attacks on our border territories suggest an organized effort to destabilize the kingdom. As the meeting progressed, Seraphina remained silent, focusing entirely on the voices around the table, on the subtle shifts in tone, in scent, in energy that accompanied each speaker. Lord Cassius spoke often, his voice carrying practiced authority. Lady Ravenna contributed less frequently, but with precise, pointed questions. 3 other counselors, Lord Thaddeus, Lord Garrett, and Lady Eliza, seemed genuinely concerned about the attacks, their emotions reading as authentic to Seraphina's heightened senses. But there were 2 others whose reactions felt wrong. Lord Bastian, whose breathing quickened whenever certain locations were mentioned, and Lord Gareth, whose scent soured with something like fear when Magnus mentioned the mining tunnels. Our scouts have reported unusual movements in the northern mountains, Magnus was saying, particularly around the old mining tunnels abandoned after the Great War. Lord Gareth shifted in his seat. The leather of his chair creaked, and his heartbeat accelerated, subtle tells that only Seraphina could detect. Surely those tunnels collapsed decades ago, Gareth said, his voice carefully controlled despite his physical reaction. They would hardly serve as a viable hideout. Not all collapsed, Magnus countered. My father maintained maps of the system. Some passages remain intact, potentially providing shelter for those who wish to remain hidden. Seraphina noted how Lord Bastian's scent changed at the mention of the maps. A spike of something akin to alarm, quickly suppressed. The meeting continued for over an hour. Strategies proposed and debated, troops allocated to vulnerable borders, theories about the rogues' motivations considered and dismissed. Throughout it all, Seraphina traced the invisible currents of tension and alignment, building a mental map of alliances and suspicions. When Magnus finally called the meeting to a close, Seraphina had formed clear impressions, though certainty remained elusive. Lady Seraphina, Lord Cassius addressed her directly as chairs scraped back. I understand you were present when one of the attackers was interrogated. What was your impression of this rogue wolf? The question felt like a trap carefully laid. Seraphina turned toward his voice. My impression, my lord, was of someone coerced rather than committed, a man forced to act against his nature through threats to those he loved. A convenient claim, he remarked, one that shifts blame to some shadowy conspiracy rather than simple territorial aggression. Simple aggressions rarely require poisoned weapons, my lord, she replied calmly, or coordinated strikes against multiple territories while carefully implicating others. A brief, charged silence followed her response. The lady has a point, Lady Ravenna conceded, though her tone suggested reluctance. These attacks show sophistication beyond common bandits or territory disputes. The council members dispersed, leaving Magnus and Seraphina alone in the chamber. Only when the heavy doors closed did he speak. What did you sense? His voice was low, urgent. Lord Bastian and Lord Gareth are hiding something, she said without hesitation. Their reactions when you mentioned the mining tunnels were telling, particularly Lord Gareth. His fear was palpable. Not Lord Cassius? He seemed most opposed to your presence. His disdain was genuine, but that doesn't make him a traitor, just a traditionalist who sees me as beneath notice. She frowned, recalling the subtle interplay she'd observed. Though there was something between him and Lady Ravenna, a tension beyond professional disagreement. Magnus's hand covered hers on the table. "You've confirmed my own suspicions about Gareth. He's been pushing for reduced patrols near the northern mountains for months. What now?" "Now," he said, rising from his seat, "we give them rope to hang themselves with." Over the next days, a careful game unfolded. Magnus publicly assigned Lord Gareth to oversee security for an upcoming diplomatic visit, a position of apparent trust that required detailed knowledge of the king's schedule and movements. Meanwhile, Seraphina was introduced to court life through a series of carefully orchestrated appearances, always at Magnus's side, always presented as his honored guest, though whispers about her true role multiplied daily. "They're saying you're his mistress," Elena informed her bluntly on the fourth morning as she dressed Seraphina's hair. "Others claim you're a witch who's enchanted him. A few of the more romantic souls believe you're his true mate, hidden away in the forest until now." Seraphina sighed, fingering her mother's pendant. "And what do you believe, Elena?" The handmaid's hand stilled momentarily. "I believe I've never seen the king look at anyone the way he looks at you, as if you're water in the desert." Before Seraphina could respond to this unsettling observation, a commotion erupted in the corridor outside. Running footsteps, urgent voices. Her door burst open without a knock. "Seraphina," Magnus's voice, tense with suppressed emotion. "We found them." "The prisoner's family?" "Yes, they were where he said, in the mining tunnels. Half-starved but alive." Relief flooded through her. Then he was telling the truth. "Yes." Magnus moved closer, his energy vibrating with intensity. "And they've confirmed everything. Recruited by Lord Darius, who answers to someone on my council." "Lord Darius?" The name was unfamiliar. "One of my father's oldest advisors, someone I've trusted for years." The pain in his voice was evident. "He's been missing for 3 days. They're being brought to the palace under guard." His hand found hers. "You were right. From the beginning, you were right." "What about Lord Bastian? Lord Gareth?" "Both mysteriously absent from court this morning." His grip tightened. "Which confirms their guilt as surely as a confession." Seraphina frowned. "Or suggests they were warned." "Exactly my concern." His voice lowered. "There's to be a feast tonight, ostensibly to honor the diplomatic envoy arriving tomorrow. In reality, it's a trap. Those loyal to me will have guards positioned throughout the hall. When Bastian and Gareth appear, as protocol demands they must, they'll be arrested publicly." "If they appear," she cautioned. "They will." His confidence was absolute. To absent themselves would be an admission of guilt. They'll come, believing their conspiracy still hidden, and walk directly into justice. The day passed in a blur of preparations. Elena dressed Seraphina in something she described as emerald silk with gold embroidery, a gown worthy of a queen, her implication making Seraphina blush. Her hair was arranged elaborately, her mother's pendant prominently displayed at her throat, despite Elena's suggestion of more formal jewels. "It protects me," Seraphina explained simply, unwilling to part with this last connection to her mother, especially tonight. Magnus came for her as evening fell, his appreciation evident in the catch of his breath when Elena presented her. "You look." He seemed to search for words. "Presentable?" she offered with a small smile. "Transcendent," he corrected softly, taking her hand. "Like the moon, given human form." The grand hall hummed with hundreds of voices as they entered, falling to hushed whispers at their arrival. Magnus guided her carefully to what must have been a raised dais, seating her beside him in a place of honor that undoubtedly raised eyebrows throughout the court. "Lord Bastian has arrived," he murmured sometime later, his lips close to her ear under the pretense of an intimate comment. "Looking nervous but present. Lord Gareth as well, though he keeps glancing toward the eastern exit." Seraphina nodded slightly, maintaining the appearance of a besotted courtship, while tension coiled within her. Something felt wrong. The air too thick with anticipation, the currents of emotion in the room too chaotic. "Lady Ravenna is watching us," she whispered back. "Her scent carries hatred beneath the perfume." Magnus's hand tightened on hers. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely. It spikes whenever she looks at me." Seraphina hesitated. "Magnus, I don't think Bastian and Gareth are the true leaders. They're afraid, yes, but not commanding." Throughout the elaborate meal, Magnus kept her informed of subtle movements, of guards shifting into position, of meaningful glances exchanged across the room. "It's time," he said finally, rising to address the gathering. Silence fell immediately. "My lords, ladies, honored guests," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. "Recent events have cast a shadow over our kingdom. Attacks on our borders, threats to our peace. Tonight, I can announce that those responsible have been identified." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Beside Seraphina, she sensed movement, guards approaching the dais from both sides. "Lord Bastian and Lord Gareth," Magnus continued, voice hardening. "Step forward to answer for your treachery!" Chaos erupted. Shouts, the scrape of chairs, the metallic song of swords being drawn. Magnus's hand pushed Seraphina firmly back into her seat. "Stay here," he ordered. "Guards, protect Lady Seraphina." Then he was gone from her side, moving into the fray. Helplessness washed over her, unable to see the danger, unable to help. The sounds of struggle intensified around her, the clash of steel, shouts of command, cries of alarm. Then a voice rose above the chaos, a woman's voice, pitched to carry. "Magnus Blackthorn," Lady Ravenna called out, her tone imperious. "Did you truly believe it would be so simple?" A sudden silence fell over the hall. Seraphina strained to understand what was happening, her senses overwhelmed by the chaos. "For 30 years I've waited," Ravenna continued. 30 years since your father stripped my family of its rightful place. 30 years planning how the Blackthorn line would end." "Ravenna," Magnus's voice tight with controlled fury, "your family committed treason. My father showed mercy by exiling rather than executing them." "Mercy?" She spat the word. "He took everything from us, our lands, our title, our honor. But he missed one thing, me. Too young, too insignificant to notice. Yet here I stand, about to reclaim what is mine." Seraphina felt a presence approaching from behind, stealthy, controlled. Before she could call out, a hand clamped over her mouth, a blade pressed against her throat. "Not a sound," a male voice hissed in her ear. The scent identified him immediately. Lord Cassius. "My lord," she whispered when he eased the pressure slightly. "Think carefully about what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," he replied, dragging her backwards off the dais, "securing the future of this kingdom." "By betraying your king?" "By removing a weak ruler before he destroys everything." The contempt in his voice was palpable. "Magnus lacks the strength to lead. His brother would have been worthy, but this one? Too soft, too ruled by sentiment." Across the hall, Ravenna was still speaking, holding Magnus's attention while Cassius spirited Seraphina away. "Your reign ends tonight, Magnus," Ravenna declared, "either by your surrender or your blood." "You overestimate your position, Ravenna," Magnus replied, his voice deadly calm. "Your conspirators are already captured or dead. Bastian and Gareth were merely pawns. Lord Darius confessed everything before he died." This seemed to catch Ravenna off guard. "You're lying. Your camps in the mining tunnels have been seized, your mercenaries either killed or imprisoned, your communication network dismantled." Each statement struck like a hammer blow. "You have nothing left but empty threats." Seraphina felt Cassius tense behind her, his grip faltering momentarily. She seized her chance, twisting away from his blade, crying out, "Magnus, behind the dais! Behind the... Cassius!" The room erupted into chaos once more. Cassius grabbed for her, but she dropped to the floor, making herself a difficult target in the darkness that was her constant companion. "Find her!" she heard Cassius command someone. "The king won't risk her life." Seraphina crawled beneath a table, her heart pounding, trying to orient herself in the cacophony. The pendant around her neck began to warm against her skin, pulsing with an inner light she couldn't see. Focusing on the sensation, she found herself drawn in a particular direction, as if the pendant were guiding her. She moved carefully through the chaos, staying low, following this strange impulse. The sounds of fighting grew louder. She heard Magnus's voice issuing commands, the clash of steel on steel, Ravenna's shrill orders to her followers. Then a new sound cut through the din, a hollow thump followed by a gasp of pain, Magnus's pain. She felt it like a physical blow to her own body, the connection between them suddenly flaring to life. "The king is down!" someone shouted. "The king has been wounded!" Seraphina abandoned caution, rushing toward the source of that pain, that connection. Bodies jostled her, hands tried to grab her, but she evaded them all with uncanny precision, as if seeing through different eyes. "Seraphina, no!" Elena's voice thick with fear. "They'll kill you too!" But she kept moving, drawn by something beyond rational thought. The crowd parted before her, whether from respect or shock she couldn't tell. The scent of blood filled her nostrils, copper-sharp and terrifying. "Magnus!" she called, dropping all pretense of formality. "Here." His voice was strained, coming from the floor ahead of her. "I'm here." She fell to her knees beside him, hands searching until they found him, shoulder, chest, then the warm wetness spreading across his abdomen. "How bad?" she whispered. "Not fatal," he grunted, "but the blade was poisoned. I can feel it spreading." Terror gripped her. "No, I won't lose you." Around them, she was vaguely aware of the continuing struggle. Guards subduing the rebels, voices shouting for the royal healer. But her world had narrowed to the man before her, to his labored breathing, to the poison working through his system. Without conscious thought, she reached for her pendant, clutching it as she placed her other hand over his wound. Words rose to her lips, ancient words in a language she'd never learned but somehow knew, the same language Magnus had mentioned from the night in the gathering hall. "Lumen vitae sanctus," she intoned, the words flowing from some deep ancestral memory. "Sanguis luna incarnate." Heat flared beneath her palm, spreading through her fingers and into Magnus's body. Her sight, always darkness, suddenly blazed with images. Not physical sight, but something deeper, something spiritual. She could see the poison like black tendrils spreading through him, could see a golden light flowing from her hand to combat it, to burn it away. "Seraphina," Magnus gasped, "your eyes." She ignored him, focusing entirely on the battle waging within his body, pushing more of the golden light toward the poisoned areas. Her strength waned, the effort draining her. But she persisted, drawing on reserves she hadn't known she possessed. "Enough," he whispered, his hand covering hers. "You'll kill yourself." "Better me than you," she answered, continuing to channel the healing energy. His fingers tightened on hers. "No. The kingdom needs its king." She could feel herself weakening, the darkness at the edges of her spiritual vision growing. "And I need you." Something shifted between them, a recognition, a certainty. In that moment, surrounded by chaos and danger, the truth crystallized with perfect clarity. The legends were real. The connection between them was no coincidence, no manipulation. It was ancient, powerful, meant to be. With a final surge of effort, she pushed the last of the darkness from his body. As it dissolved, her strange vision faded, returning her to familiar blindness. Exhaustion crashed over her, and she slumped forward, his strong arms catching her before she could fall. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "I've always got you." The sounds of battle had ceased. The hall was eerily quiet now, save for the moans of the wounded and the orders of guards securing prisoners. "Your Majesty," a voice approached cautiously. "The traitors have been subdued. Lady Ravenna is captured." "And Lord Cassius?" Magnus asked, still holding Seraphina close. "Dead, Your Majesty. He attacked when cornered." Magnus's arms tightened around her. "Prepare a chamber for Lady Seraphina immediately, and send for my personal healer." "I'm fine," she protested weakly. "You nearly drained your life force to save mine," he countered. "You need rest and care." She wanted to argue further, but darkness was closing in, her consciousness slipping away despite her efforts to hold on. The last thing she heard was Magnus's voice, soft yet commanding. "When she wakes, Bring me the ancient texts from my father's private library, the ones on the moon-bound ritual. Then darkness claimed her completely. Seraphina floated in darkness, untethered from time and space. Strange visions flickered through her consciousness. Ancient wolves running beneath a blood-red moon, a circle of hooded figures chanting in a forgotten language, her mother's face transforming into something inhuman, yet beautiful. Through it all, a golden thread connected her to something, someone, pulling her back toward the waking world. When consciousness finally returned, it came gradually. First, the softness of silk beneath her fingertips, then the scent of cedar and healing herbs, the distant sounds of palace life filtering through closed doors, and finally, the awareness of a presence nearby, someone breathing deeply, steadily, as if in sleep. "Magnus?" she whispered, her voice cracked and weak. The breathing pattern changed immediately. "Seraphina." His voice came from closer than she expected, husky with exhaustion. "You're awake." She tried to sit up, but her body refused to cooperate, muscles trembling with the effort. His hands were there instantly, supporting her, arranging pillows behind her back. "How long?" she asked as he pressed a cup of water to her lips. 3 days. The strain in his voice revealed what he didn't say. 3 days of worry, of keeping vigil by her bedside. She drank deeply, the cool water reviving her parched throat. "The conspirators? Lady Ravenna?" "Secured in the northern tower. The investigation continues, but the immediate threat has been neutralized." His hand lingered on hers. "You nearly died, Seraphina." The raw emotion in his voice caught her by surprise. "I couldn't let you die." "What you did..." He paused, seeming to search for words. "The royal healer said she's never seen anything like it. The poison was ancient, called the blood of lichen. No known cure. Yet here you are. Because of you." His fingers tightened around hers. "You channeled something powerful, something beyond ordinary healing magic." Memories of that moment flooded back, the golden light flowing through her, the ancient words pouring from her lips, the strange sight granted in those moments. "I saw the poison," she murmured. "Saw it like black tendrils spreading through your veins, and somehow I knew how to burn it away." "Your eyes changed," he told her. "First white, then gold. The pendant your mother gave you shattered, releasing light that everyone in the hall witnessed." Seraphina's hand flew to her throat, finding it bare. "My pendant." The amber casing broke, but what was inside remains. Magnus pressed something into her palm, a small, warm object that seemed to pulse against her skin. A moonstone, the traditional focus of a moon-bound Omega's power. She cradled the stone, feeling its gentle warmth. "My mother never told me." "Perhaps she knew you weren't ready." His weight shifted on the edge of the bed. "Or perhaps she wanted to protect you from the burden that comes with such power." Seraphina turned the stone over in her fingers, sensing rather than seeing its luminous depths. "What happens now?" A moment of silence stretched between them. "That depends on you," he said finally, "on what you choose." Before she could ask what he meant, the door opened. Footsteps approached, the brisk, efficient stride of the royal healer. "Ah, our patient is awake," she announced. "Your Majesty, if you would permit me to examine her?" "Of course." Magnus's hand slipped from Seraphina's, though reluctantly. "I have matters to attend to, but I'll return this evening." After he left, the healer, who introduced herself as Alicia, conducted a thorough examination, checking Seraphina's pulse, temperature, and energy levels. "Remarkable recovery," she commented. "Most who channel that amount of power would remain unconscious for weeks." "Is that what I did? Channeled power?" Alicia's hands stilled momentarily. "You did something few living beings have witnessed, my lady. You tapped into the oldest magic of our kind, the primal bond between Alpha and Omega that existed before territories, before royal lines, before the division of packs." Seraphina considered this. The king mentioned something called the moon-bound ritual. Did he now? Interest sharpened the healer's tone. It's been 3 centuries since a true moon-bound pair emerged. The ritual is significant. What does it entail? That's for His Majesty to discuss with you. Alicia's voice grew formal, closing the subject. For now, you need food, gentle exercise, and more rest. You'll stay in these chambers until your strength returns. The chambers, Serafina discovered as Alicia guided her through them, were not the blue suite where she'd stayed before. These rooms were larger, more lavish, with connecting doors to what Alicia described as the king's private study. These are the queen's chambers, Serafina realized aloud. The former queen's, yes, Alicia corrected carefully. They've stood empty since the king's mother passed 5 years ago. The implication hung in the air, unaddressed but unmistakable. After Alicia departed, Elena arrived with a tray of nourishing foods and a wealth of palace gossip. The whole court is talking about what happened at the feast, she reported, as she helped Serafina to a small table by an open window. They're calling you the Moon Witch, the Alpha's mate, the Blind Seer, all manner of dramatic titles. Serafina picked at a piece of honey-drizzled bread. And what does the king say about these rumors? Nothing to contradict them. Elena arranged a napkin across Serafina's lap. Which speaks volumes, if you ask me. She described the aftermath of the failed coup, how the remaining loyal council members had rallied around Magnus, how the noble houses had sent declarations of fealty, how the common people were calling it the Night of Golden Light. They say it's an omen, Elena continued, that the old powers are awakening because they're needed. There's talk of darker things stirring in the far north, beyond the mapped territories. A chill ran down Serafina's spine. What kind of darker things? Just rumors, my lady. Tales of ancient wolf clans returning from exile, of shapeshifters who don't need the moon's pull to change form. As the day progressed, Serafina regained more strength, managing to walk the perimeter of her new chambers with Elena's guidance, learning the layout of furniture, the placement of doors, the locations of scented markers Magnus had again arranged for her convenience. By evening, she felt almost herself again, though the core of her power remained depleted, a hollow sensation where the warmth of her gift usually resided. She sat in a comfortable chair near the hearth, the moonstone clutched in her palm when Magnus's distinctive footsteps approached. "You look better," he said as he entered, the door closing softly behind him. "I feel better." She turned her face toward his voice, though not fully restored. "That will take time." He moved to sit opposite her, the leather of the chair creaking beneath his weight. "The power you channeled would have killed most Omegas. Yet my mother possessed the same gift? Similar, but I suspect not as powerful." His voice softened. "Morgana was remarkable, but what you did in that hall..." He trailed off. "The texts I've consulted suggest your abilities may be unprecedented." Serafina curled her fingers tighter around the moonstone. "These texts you mentioned, about the moonbound ritual, will you tell me what they say?" A moment of silence, then the sound of him leaning forward in his chair. "The ritual is ancient, dating back to the first pack, before our kind split into territories. It formalized the bond between a ruling alpha and their moonbound Omega counterpart." "A marriage ceremony?" "More than that." His voice dropped lower. "A spiritual and magical union performed during a blood moon, binding the pair's life forces together. The texts describe it as 2 souls entwined as one, sharing strength, sharing sight, sharing life itself." The implication settled over her slowly. "Sharing life, you mean, if one dies, the other follows," he confirmed grimly. "It's why the ritual fell out of practice. Too many royal lines ended when one mate fell in battle and the other immediately followed." "That sounds more like a curse than a blessing." "Perhaps, but it also granted great power, the Alpha gaining heightened senses and clarity of thought, the Omega gaining physical strength, and occasionally brief periods of sight." Serafina's breath caught. "Sight?" "Through the Alpha's eyes, yes. A shared consciousness in moments of need." His voice carried a careful neutrality. but that's merely what the texts claim. No living person has witnessed a true moon-bound pair in centuries. She absorbed this information, turning it over in her mind. And you believe we are such a pair? The signs are compelling. He shifted in his chair. Your ability to calm my rage, the trance states you enter, the healing power you channeled, the way the pendant responded when we're together. But the ritual itself remains your choice, he added quickly. I would never presume to— Is that why you brought me to the capital? She interrupted. Because you suspected this connection between us. No. His answer came without hesitation. I brought you here because I needed your gift for detecting deception. This deeper connection I didn't fully recognize until after you saved my life. She believed him. Whatever this strange bond between them, it hadn't been part of some calculated plan. What happens now? She asked again, echoing her earlier question. That depends on several factors. His voice turned more formal, the king speaking rather than the man. First, your recovery. Second, the continuing investigation into the conspiracy. We've captured the visible leaders, but I suspect the roots go deeper. And third, a pause. The blood moon approaches in 2 weeks' time. If we were to consider the ritual, that would be the moment. 2 weeks. Such a short time to decide something so monumental, so irreversible. I need time to think, she said softly. Of course. He rose from his chair. Rest now. We can speak more tomorrow. But as he turned to leave, she called after him. Magnus? He paused. Yes? Stay a while longer, she requested, surprising herself with her boldness. Tell me about yourself, not the king, but the man. If I'm to consider binding my life to yours, I should know who you are. He returned to his seat, silent for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. Then, with quiet candor, he began to speak. He told her of his childhood as the second son, never expecting to rule, training instead as a diplomat and scholar while his brother Alaric learned the ways of kingship. Of his love for ancient texts and histories, his fascination with the old ways. Of the devastating day when Alaric was found poisoned in his chambers, and how the crown passed to Magnus, unprepared and grieving. I was never meant to be king, he confessed. Alaric was everything an alpha king should be, strong, decisive, commanding. I was the quiet one, the thinker. When he died, many doubted I could fill his place. Is that why you cultivated such a fearsome reputation? The shadow of the North? Partly, he admitted. A scholarly king invites challenge. A rage-filled one inspires fear. But the rage was real, not calculated. Grief transformed into something darker, something I couldn't control, until you. In turn, she shared her own story, growing up blind in a world of sighted wolves, learning to navigate by sound and scent and touch. The loss of her mother when she was 12, leaving her in Valeria's care. The small kindnesses and casual cruelties of pack life, where an omega without sight was seen as doubly burdensome. Yet you never became bitter, he observed. What would be the point? She shrugged. Bitterness changes nothing except the heart that harbors it. Wisdom beyond your years, he murmured. They talked late into the night, the formal distance between king and subject gradually dissolving, replaced by something more genuine, two souls recognizing each other beyond titles and stations. When he finally left, promising to return the next day, Seraphina sat awake for hours, the moonstone warm in her palm, contemplating the choice before her. The ritual offered power, possibly even sight, but at what cost? To bind her life force to his meant accepting that her fate would forever be entwined with the king's, his triumphs, his battles, his enemies becoming hers. Yet already she felt the pull between them, a connection that defied rational explanation. Perhaps the ritual would merely formalize what already existed in truth. Over the next days, as her strength returned, Magnus brought her ancient texts to study, having scribes read them aloud as she absorbed their contents. The history of the moon-bound pairs fascinated her, powerful duos who had shaped the kingdom's history, their combined abilities accomplishing feats neither could have achieved alone. One account particularly captured her attention, the story of King Thorn and his mate Lyra, who together had ended a century-long war through a combination of strength and vision. "The king's might and the seer's insight," the text proclaimed, together forming wisdom greater than either possessed alone. When she wasn't studying, Seraphina familiarized herself with the palace, gradually expanding her mental map of the royal residence. Elena accompanied her always, describing the architecture, the artwork, the people they passed. Court members regarded her with a mixture of awe and wariness, conversations falling silent as she approached, resuming in whispers after she passed. She sensed their uncertainty. Was she truly the king's destined mate, as rumors claimed, or merely a blind Omega who had somehow enchanted him? "Pay them no mind," Elena advised. "Half of them would claim to be moonbound themselves if they thought it would gain them favor." 5 days after she awakened, Magnus escorted her to a council meeting, the first gathering of his remaining loyal advisors since the failed coup. "My trusted counselors," he introduced as they entered the chamber. "Those who stood firm when treachery threatened our kingdom." 4 voices murmured greetings: Lord Thaddeus, Lord Garrett, Lady Eliza, and a new voice, young and clear, belonging to Lady Diana, recently elevated to the council. "We face uncertain times," Magnus began once they were seated. "The conspiracy has been broken, but questions remain. Why target our kingdom now? What were they truly after? And what connection might exist to the rumors from the far north?" "Rumors, Your Majesty?" Lady Diana inquired. "Reports of movement beyond the frost peaks," Magnus clarified. "Old wolf clans long thought extinct, now stirring again." Seraphina felt the council members' collective tension rise. "Surely not the Shadow Clan," Lord Garrett murmured. "They were destroyed generations ago." "Nothing is certain," Magnus replied, "which is why I've dispatched scouts beyond the mountains. Until they return, we must secure our own territories against any further attempts at destabilization." The meeting continued, focusing on practical matters of security, diplomatic relations with neighboring territories, and the upcoming Blood Moon ceremony, traditionally a time of renewal for the kingdom. Throughout the discussion, Seraphina remained silent, listening intently not just to words, but to the emotions behind them. Unlike the previous council, this group seemed genuinely loyal to Magnus. Their concerns focused on the kingdom's welfare rather than personal advancement. When the meeting concluded, Magnus kept her by his side as the councilors departed, waiting until they were alone before speaking. "What did you sense?" he asked, falling into what had become their ritual. "Loyalty," she replied without hesitation. "Genuine concern for you and the kingdom. No deception." His relief was palpable. "Good. I need advisors I can trust for what may be coming." "You truly believe these rumors of ancient clans returning?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But the timing is suspicious. A coordinated attempt to weaken the kingdom from within, coinciding with reports of movement beyond our borders." His hand found hers on the table. "Which makes the Blood Moon ceremony even more significant. If trouble is coming, I need to be at full strength to face it." She understood his implication. "The moon-bound ritual." "Yes." His thumb traced circles on her palm, the gesture now familiar and comforting. "But only if you're certain, Seraphina. I won't have you enter such a bond out of duty or fear. And if I refuse? Then we face whatever comes as king and subject, not as bonded mates." His voice softened. "I won't pretend I don't hope for the latter, but the choice must be yours." The weight of the decision pressed upon her. To refuse might leave the kingdom vulnerable at a crucial moment. To accept meant binding her life to his permanently, with all the danger that entailed. Yet beneath these practical considerations lay something deeper, the undeniable connection she felt to him, the sense of recognition that had drawn her to him from their first meeting. "I need to consult with someone," she said finally. "Your sister?" "Yes. Before I decide something this momentous, I should speak with the only family I have left." "Of course." He squeezed her hand. "I'll arrange for her to be brought to the capital immediately." 2 days later, Valeria arrived, bursting into Seraphina's chambers with her characteristic energy. "Royal guards escorted me the entire way," she exclaimed, embracing her sister tightly. "Me, a simple beta warrior, treated like some noble lady." "Are you fully recovered?" Seraphina asked, running her hands over Valeria's arms, checking for herself. "Completely healed, thanks to the king's healer." Valeria pulled back slightly. "But enough about me. The entire pack is talking about you, Sarah. They say you saved the king's life with ancient magic, that you're to be his mate." Seraphina guided her sister to a sitting area where Elena had arranged refreshments before discreetly withdrawing. "It's complicated," Seraphina began, then proceeded to explain everything: the conspiracy, the attack, the healing power she'd channeled, and the moon-bound ritual that Magnus had proposed. Valeria listened in uncharacteristic silence, only speaking when Seraphina finished. "So if you accept this ritual, your life becomes tied to his. If he dies, you die." "Yes." "And you're considering this?" Disbelief colored her voice. "I am." Seraphina twisted the moonstone between her fingers. "It's not just about the king, Valeria. It's about protecting the kingdom from whatever threat is emerging. The ritual would grant us both greater power to face what's coming." "At the risk of your life," Valeria countered. "Sarah, you've only known him for weeks. How can you consider binding yourself to him so irrevocably?" "It feels like I've known him much longer." Seraphina struggled to articulate the certainty she felt. "From the moment we met, there was a connection I can't explain, as if we were always meant to find each other." Valeria sighed. "The romantic notion of fated mates. I never thought my practical sister would fall for such things." "It's more than romance," Seraphina insisted. "It's like recognizing a part of myself I didn't know was missing." A long silence followed. Then Valeria took her hands. "You truly care for him, don't you?" "I do," Seraphina admitted, the simple truth feeling momentous. "But it's not just that. When I'm with him, I feel whole, powerful, like I finally understand what I'm meant to be." "Then I suppose you've already made your decision." Valeria's tone held resignation, but also understanding. "I wanted your blessing," Seraphina said softly. "Oh, Sarah." Valeria pulled her into another embrace. "You've never needed anyone's blessing to follow your heart. But if it matters, yes, you have mine. If this is your path, then walk it with my love behind you." Relief washed through her. "Thank you." That evening, when Magnus came to her chambers, she was waiting by the window, the moonstone clutched in her palm, her decision made. "Valeria has given her blessing," she said as he entered. His footsteps faltered briefly. "Does that mean—" "It means I've decided." She turned to face him, chin raised. "I will participate in the moonbound ritual." The breath he released suggested he'd been holding it since entering. "Seraphina, are you certain? Once done, it cannot be undone." "I'm certain." She stepped toward him, guided by the sound of his breathing, stopping just before him. Not because of duty or the kingdom's need, though those matter, but because whatever this connection is between us, it feels right. It feels true. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle yet electric. "Then on the blood moon, we will be bound." "On the blood moon," she echoed, feeling the weight and wonder of the commitment. "There are preparations to be made," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "Ancient protocols to observe." "Tell me what I need to do." His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. "First, this." Then his lips found hers, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. Unlike the trance state kiss she couldn't remember, this one burned itself into her consciousness. The warmth of his mouth, the scent of him enveloping her, the steady beat of his heart echoing her own. When they parted, she felt changed somehow, as if the ritual had already begun, invisible bonds forming between them. 7 days, he murmured. 7 days until the blood moon rises. 7 days until their fates would be irrevocably entwined. 7 days until she would become not just Seraphina of the Northern Pine Pack, but the Alpha King's moon-bound mate, his balance, his conscience, his heart. And perhaps, just perhaps, the key to surviving the storm that was gathering beyond the Frost Peaks, where ancient enemies waited to test the strength of a united Alpha and Omega once more. The 7 days before the blood moon passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Ancient texts were consulted, ceremonial chambers prepared, and traditional garments crafted by the palace's most skilled artisans. Throughout the kingdom, word spread of the impending ritual, and pilgrims began arriving at the capital, pack representatives from all 5 territories coming to witness a ceremony not performed in 3 centuries. On the morning of the 7th day, Seraphina awoke to Elena's gentle touch and the scent of sacred herbs burning in a bronze brazier. "The purification begins at dawn," Elena explained, helping Seraphina from bed. "First the ritual bath, then meditation, then fasting until the ceremony at moonrise." The bath awaited in an adjoining chamber, a large copper tub filled with steaming water infused with moonflowers, silver sage, and wolf's heart, plants sacred to their kind since the first pack. As Elena helped her disrobe, Seraphina clutched the moonstone that had become her constant companion. "You may keep it with you during the bath," Elena assured her. "It's part of the ritual." The water embraced her like liquid silk, the aromatic steam opening her lungs and calming her mind. Elena washed her hair with special oils, chanting softly in the old tongue as she worked. Phrases Seraphina somehow understood, despite never having learned the language. "May the moon's light guide your path. May your spirit find its other half. May the ancient bond bring strength to both. Power shared, never broken." After the bath came hours of meditation in a chamber deep within the palace, accessible only by a spiraling staircase that descended beneath the earth. The room was perfectly round, Elena explained, with walls of polished obsidian and a ceiling open to the sky above, designed to capture the blood moon's light at its zenith. "You'll wait here until sunset," Elena instructed, guiding Seraphina to a cushion at the center of the chamber. "Focus on your connection to the king. Visualize the bond between you strengthening, preparing to receive the moon's blessing." Left alone with her thoughts, Seraphina centered herself, cradling the moonstone between her palms. Its warmth pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, growing stronger as the hours passed. Through this stone, she felt a tenuous connection to Magnus, as if across the palace he too held a similar stone, their energies reaching for each other across the distance. The day stretched endlessly, her empty stomach a reminder of the ritual's solemnity. When footsteps finally approached, light and careful on the stone stairs, she knew without being told that the time had come. "Lady Seraphina," came a voice she recognized as Elysia's, the royal healer. "The sun sets. It's time to dress for the ceremony." The ritual garment felt impossibly light against her skin, woven from what Elysia described as moonshadow silk, a fabric created by silkworms raised on moonflower petals, then dyed with silver and indigo to capture the colors of the night sky. The gown flowed around her like water, seeming to adapt to her movements as if alive. "Your hair must remain unbound," Elysia instructed, weaving small silver bells and moonstone beads into Seraphina's pale locks. "The moon-bound Omega must come to the ritual with nothing to constrain the flow of power." "And Magnus?" Seraphina asked, breaking her day-long silence. "How does the Alpha King prepare?" A brief hesitation. "His ritual differs from yours. Where you embrace openness, he embraces control. Where you surrender to the moon's power, he must dominate it. 2 opposites, creating balance." The bells in her hair chimed softly as Elysia guided her up the spiral staircase, emerging into the cool evening air. The palace courtyard had been transformed, Elena whispered in her ear as they walked. White stones forming a circular path, torches burning with blue flame marking the cardinal directions, nobles and pack representatives gathered in concentric rings around a central altar. "The blood moon rises," someone announced as they approached. "The ritual begins." Murmurs spread through the crowd, falling silent as drums began to beat, a slow, hypnotic rhythm that seemed to match Seraphina's pulse. Elysia guided her forward along the stone path, each step bringing her closer to the center, closer to Magnus. She felt him before she heard him, his presence unmistakable even among hundreds. His energy reached for hers like a physical touch, the moonstone in her palm flaring with answering warmth. "The Alpha approaches from the east," a ceremonial voice proclaimed. "The Omega from the west. May their paths converge under the blood moon's light." The drums intensified as they moved toward each other, accompanied now by flutes playing a melody that seemed to awaken something ancient within her. 3 steps remaining, 2, 1, and then his hands were taking hers, warm and strong and steady. "Seraphina," Magnus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Magnus," she returned, feeling the weight of the moment settle around them. The high priest's voice rose above the music. "For 3 centuries, the kingdom has awaited the return of the moon-bound pair. Tonight, under the blood moon's blessing, the Alpha King and his chosen Omega come before us to renew the ancient covenant." The crowd's energy shifted, anticipation building as the priest continued. "The ritual of binding is sacred, irreversible, eternal. Once joined, these souls will share one fate, one power, one destiny, until death and beyond. Does the Alpha King come willingly to this bond?" "I do," Magnus answered, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Does the Omega Seer come willingly to this bond?" Seraphina's throat tightened with emotion, but her voice remained clear. "I do." "Then kneel before the altar and present your offerings." Magnus guided her to kneel beside him on cushions of woven silk. The stone altar before them radiated cold, ancient power. "The Alpha presents the Fang," the priest intoned. "From the first Alpha of my line," Magnus stated, placing something upon the altar with a soft click, symbol of strength, protection, and dominance. "The Omega presents the Moonstone." Seraphina's fingers tightened momentarily around the warm stone that had become her talisman. Then, with resolve, she extended her hand. "From my mother's line, passed through generations, symbol of insight, balance, and wisdom." The priest took the stone, placing it beside the Fang on the altar. "Strength without wisdom is tyranny. Wisdom without strength is impotence. Together, they form the perfect rule." The drums ceased abruptly, leaving only the haunting melody of the flutes. Above them, through the open ceiling, Seraphina sensed the blood moon's light intensifying, bathing the altar in crimson radiance. "The moon rises to her throne," the priest announced. "The time has come." A ceremonial blade was pressed into Magnus's hand. She heard the soft hiss as he drew it across his palm. Then it was placed in her hand, the handle warm from his touch. She mirrored his action, drawing the razor-sharp edge across her own palm, feeling the sting and the warm flow of blood. Blood of the Alpha, blood of the Omega, mingled beneath the moon's eye. Their wounded hands were pressed together, fingers interlacing, blood meeting blood. The priest placed the moonstone and Fang atop their joined hands. "By blood we bind you, by moon we seal you, by ancient power we unite you. What the first pack joined, let no wolf tear asunder." The moment the final word left the priest's lips, energy surged between their joined hands, hot, electric, overwhelming. The moonstone and Fang melted together, burning into their flesh without pain, becoming part of them. Seraphina gasped as power rushed through her, unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Raw, primal magic flowing from Magnus to her and back again in an endless circuit. Visions flooded her mind, past moonbound pairs stretching back through millennia, their triumphs and sacrifices, their joys and sorrows. She felt Magnus experiencing the same visions, their consciousness merging at the deepest level. Then something extraordinary happened. For the first time in her life, Seraphina saw, not with physical eyes, but through Magnus's perception, shared across their newly forged bond. Colors blazed into her awareness. The crimson moon above, the blue flames of the torches, the silver gleam of the ritual circle, and Magnus himself, his face finally revealed to her, strong features dominated by eyes of piercing amber, his expression one of awe and tenderness as he gazed at her. "I can see you," she whispered, wonder breaking through the ritual's solemnity. His eyes widened in understanding. "Through my eyes?" "Yes." The shared vision lasted only moments before fading, but the connection remained, a golden thread binding their spirits, unbreakable and eternal. As they rose to their feet, still holding hands, the crowd erupted in cheers and howls of celebration. "The ritual is complete," the priest proclaimed. "Behold the Alpha King and his moon-bound queen." Magnus raised their joined hands, and Seraphina felt a wave of his power flow through her. Strength unlike anything she'd known before, making her feel invincible, immortal. In return, she felt her own gift for perception expanding into him, sharpening his awareness of the emotions and intentions surrounding them. The celebration continued long into the night, but for Seraphina, everything beyond Magnus faded to insignificance. The bond between them hummed with vitality, adjusting and strengthening as they grew accustomed to their shared power. Later, when they finally withdrew to the royal chambers, now their chambers, the full magnitude of what they'd done settled upon them. "Can you still see?" Magnus asked, as he closed the door behind them, finally alone after hours of ritual and celebration. "Not constantly," she admitted. "It comes in flashes, when our connection intensifies, but I feel you, always, your strength, your thoughts, your emotions. As I feel yours." His hands framed her face with new familiarity. "Your courage amazes me, Seraphina. To bind yourself to me, to accept this responsibility." "It doesn't feel like sacrifice," she said truthfully. "It feels like becoming who I was always meant to be." His thumb brushed across her lower lip. "My queen." The words sent a shiver through her. Queen not just in title but in power, her authority now equal to his through the ancient bond they shared. "My king," she returned, the simple phrase carrying the weight of her commitment. When he kissed her, the bond between them flared, vision returning in a rush of color and light. She saw herself through his eyes, radiant in the ceremonial gown, moonstone beads gleaming in her pale hair, her unseeing eyes now illuminated with golden light. The night that followed was one of discovery, of each other, of the bond's capabilities, of the new reality they'd created together. Through their connection, Seraphina experienced sight in fragments, moments of clarity that took her breath away. In turn, Magnus felt her heightened perception, extending his senses beyond normal limits, allowing him to feel the emotions and intentions of those around them. "It's how you always perceive the world," he marveled, as they lay together in the pre-dawn hours. "So rich with feeling, with undercurrents most never notice." "And your physical strength," she countered, feeling it flowing through her own limbs. "The certainty of your movements, the absolute confidence in your body's capabilities." "We balance each other," he murmured against her hair, "as the ritual intended." They slept briefly, wrapped in each other's arms, the bond humming contentedly between them. But their peace was shattered with the dawn as urgent footsteps approached their door, followed by insistent knocking. "Your Majesties," came a guard's voice, tight with tension. "Forgive the intrusion, but the council awaits. Scouts have returned from beyond the Frost Peaks with dire news." Magnus was instantly alert, the shift in his emotions rippling through their bond. "We'll be there shortly." As they dressed hurriedly, Seraphina felt his concern and focused determination flowing into her. "What do you think they found?" she asked. "Nothing good," he replied grimly. "The timing is too perfect. The very morning after our binding." The council chamber hummed with nervous energy as they entered. Through their bond, Seraphina perceived the room with new clarity. Not sight exactly, but an awareness of space, of the counselors' positions, of the tension radiating from every corner. "Your Majesties," Lord Thaddeus greeted them, his voice betraying exhaustion. "The scouts returned an hour ago. Their report is disturbing." "Let us hear it," Magnus commanded, guiding Seraphina to her seat beside his. A new voice spoke, rough, weary, bearing the scent of long travel and fear barely contained. "Your Majesty, we reached the northern pass 3 days ago, as instructed. What we found there—" The scout faltered, and Seraphina felt his terror spike through her enhanced senses. "Continue," she encouraged gently. "Whatever you saw, we must know." "An army, Your Majesty, unlike any I've ever seen. Wolves, but not like us. They change form at will, without the moon's call. Their eyes—" his voice broke. "Their eyes glow red in darkness." A collective intake of breath from the council members. Through the bond, Seraphina felt Magnus's recognition and dread. "The Shadow Clan," he said quietly. "Not extinct after all." "You know of them?" Seraphina asked, picking up fragments of ancient memory through their connection. "Stories from my father," Magnus explained. "Tales of the first schism, when the original pack divided, those who followed the moon's law, changing only under her light, and those who sought to master transformation through blood magic." "The blood drinkers," Lord Garrett murmured. "I thought they were legends to frighten pups." "All legends hold seeds of truth." Magnus's hand found Seraphina's under the table. "How many, Scout?" "Thousands, Your Majesty. They camp beyond the pass, but their scouts range closer each day. They wear armor made from black metal that absorbs light. Their weapons—" he swallowed audibly. "Their weapons are coated with something that smells of death." "How long until they reach our borders?" Lady Diana asked, her voice remarkably steady. "At their current pace, 2 weeks, perhaps less." Silence fell over the council chamber, heavy with implication. Through their bond, Seraphina felt Magnus processing the information, weighing options, formulating strategies. "This cannot be coincidence," he said finally. "The conspiracy to weaken us from within, followed immediately by an external threat. They're connected." "Lady Ravenna," Seraphina realized suddenly. "She must have been in communication with them." "Have her brought for questioning," Magnus ordered a guard, "and double the security on all prisoners from the conspiracy." As the guard departed, the council erupted into discussion, proposals for defense, questions about the Shadow Clan's capabilities, debates about whether to seek allies from neighboring kingdoms. Through it all, Seraphina remained focused on Magnus, their bond allowing her to follow his thoughts as he evaluated each suggestion. When the clamor grew too intense, she raised her hand, and to her surprise, the room fell silent immediately. Her new authority as moonbound queen already recognized. "Before we decide on action," she said calmly, "we need more information, not just about the enemy's numbers and movements, but about their nature, their weaknesses. The old texts that describe the moonbound ritual may also contain knowledge about the Shadow Clan." "The Queen is right," Magnus agreed. "Lord Thaddeus, assemble scholars to search the ancient archives. Lady Diana, dispatch messengers to our allies. This threat concerns all territories, not just our own. Lord Garrett, begin preparations for the defense of the capital and major settlements." As the council members hurried to obey, Seraphina felt a surge of pride through their bond. Magnus's appreciation of her contribution, his recognition of how their different perspectives strengthened their response. When they were finally alone, he turned to her, taking both her hands in his. "The bond served its purpose already. Your clarity of thought cut through their panic. And your decisiveness provided direction," she countered. "But Magnus, this is only the beginning, isn't it?" His grip tightened. "Yes. Whatever comes, it will test us as no moonbound pair has been tested in centuries." A guard interrupted them, entering with a bow. "Your Majesties, the prisoner Lady Ravenna refuses to speak. She claims she has nothing to say to a false king and his blind witch." Magnus's anger flared, flowing through their bond like fire. Seraphina squeezed his hands, sending calming energy back to him. "Then perhaps she'll speak to me alone," Seraphina suggested. Her contempt might make her careless. "It's too dangerous," Magnus protested. "I'm no longer just an Omega," she reminded him. "Your strength flows in me now, and my perceptions are sharper than ever." After a moment's consideration, he nodded. "But I'll be nearby, watching through our bond." The northern tower's prison levels were cold and damp, the stone walls designed to contain even the strongest Alpha's power. Seraphina followed the guard's footsteps, her enhanced senses mapping the narrow corridors, the barred cells, the desperate sense of the imprisoned conspirators. Ravenna's cell was at the furthest end, separated from the others. As the door creaked open, Seraphina felt the former counselor's bitter hatred reach out like a physical blow. "The blind queen comes to gloat," Ravenna sneered, her voice hoarse but still carrying its aristocratic edge. "How touching." "I come for answers," Seraphina replied calmly, taking the seat a guard placed for her. "About your allies beyond the frost peaks." A spike of surprise, quickly suppressed. "I don't know what you mean." Through their bond, Seraphina felt Magnus's distant presence, watching, listening. Drawing on his strength, she pushed harder. "The Shadow Clan marches on our kingdom, Ravenna. Did you truly think they would honor whatever bargain you struck? That they would place you on the throne once Magnus was gone?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed Ravenna's emotional landscape. "Fantasies. The Shadow Clan is extinct. Their army approaches our borders even now, thousands strong." Seraphina leaned forward. "They used you, Ravenna, a disposable tool to weaken us from within." "You're lying." But the doubt had taken root. "I can sense your fear," Seraphina pressed. "You didn't know, did you? Your contact never revealed the full plan. Tell me who it was. Who approached you with promises of revenge against the Blackthorn line?" Ravenna's composure cracked. "He called himself the Blood Messenger. I never saw his face. He came only at night, speaking through my window, his voice like gravel on ice." "When did this begin?" "A year ago, after Magnus took the throne." Ravenna's bitterness resurfaced. "He knew my family's history, knew how Magnus's father had destroyed us. He promised restoration, justice. And all you had to do was destabilize the kingdom, create conflict between the territories, isolate the king." "The plan was perfect," Ravenna hissed. "Until you appeared. The Blood Messenger never anticipated a moonbound Omega." This confirmation sent a chill through Seraphina. "He knows our traditions then, our weaknesses." "He knows everything about your kind." Ravenna laughed suddenly, the sound edged with hysteria. "He said your moon worship made you blind to the true power of blood, that the Shadow Clan would teach that lesson to all 5 territories." "When is he coming for you?" Seraphina asked, intuition guiding her question. "He promised to free you, didn't he?" Ravenna's shock was answer enough. "How could you know that?" "Because you're still valuable to them. As a figurehead, a puppet queen if they succeed." Seraphina rose. "But they won't succeed, Ravenna. And when they fail, remember that you chose the wrong side in this war." She turned to leave, but Ravenna's voice stopped her. "He'll come with the new moon," the prisoner whispered, fear finally overwhelming her hatred. "When your powers are weakest, that's when the Shadow Clan strikes." "Thank you for this truth," Seraphina said quietly. "It may be the one service you've ever rendered your kingdom." Magnus was waiting outside the prison tower, his anxiety flowing through their bond. As soon as she emerged, he pulled her into a protective embrace. "You heard?" she asked against his chest. "Everything." His voice was grim. "The new moon is 10 days from now." Time enough to prepare, but barely. They walked together toward the council chambers, their steps perfectly synchronized, their thoughts intertwining through the bond. "If the Shadow Clan can change form without the moon's influence," Seraphina mused, "they won't be weakened during the new moon as we are." "No," Magnus agreed, "but perhaps our bond gives us an advantage they don't expect. The texts say a moonbound pair draws power from each other, not just from the moon." Hope flickered between them, strengthening as they considered the possibilities. "Whatever comes," Seraphina said, determination hardening her voice, "we face it together." "Always," Magnus affirmed, the word resonating through their shared consciousness. As they reached the council chambers, ready to begin preparations for the coming battle, Seraphina felt the moonstone mark on her palm pulse with warmth. Through their bond came a flash of sight, Magnus as he saw her in that moment, strong, determined, transformed from the hesitant Omega she'd once been into a queen worthy of legend. And beyond this glimpse of herself, she caught something more, a vision of what might be. The two of them standing on a battlefield, power flowing between them in golden waves, facing the red-eyed leader of the Shadow Clan across a divide soon to be crossed. The vision faded, but its message remained clear. The ritual that bound them was no mere ceremony, no simple joining of hearts. It was preparation for this moment, this conflict that would determine the fate of all 5 territories. Whatever darkness approached from beyond the Frost Peaks, whatever ancient power the Shadow Clan commanded, they would face it as the legends decreed. Alpha and Omega, strength and wisdom, bound by blood and moon and destiny itself. The Shadow of the North and his moon-bound queen, the last defense against a storm centuries in the making.